Hello and welcome to Arsenal Analysed live. Instant reaction for you guys coming straight after Arsenal versus Luton. What a game of football we witnessed. Whether or not you enjoyed it as an Arsenal fan, there is so much to break down and discuss during today's show. And I'd be really keen to hear the thoughts of you guys watching. So get your comments in the chat box now so that they can be discussed during today's live show. But honestly, if you would have told me before kickoff that the game was going to finish 4-3, Arsenal were going to concede 3 goals to Luton, Arsenal were going to be hanging in right up until the very last minute of the game, and it was going to take a last couple seconds effort from, well, whether it was Declan Rice or someone else to squeeze the 3 points in, I wouldn't have believed you. Just no way, shape or form I would have believed you at all. It was such an end-to-end game. I imagine a lot of neutral fans watching this evening would have really enjoyed that game. And I imagine that a lot of the Luton players are going to feel really gutted. They put a hell of a shift in, respect where it's due. The Luton players done really well to fight as long as they did, if I'm being honest with you. It's not what I expected. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't expecting it to be, an easy game. Coming into this fixture, I spoke on social media, various WhatsApp groups, you name it. It was either going to be one of those games where Arsenal were going to win. This was my opinion. Either win 1-0, it was going to be a tough game, it was going to be a slog, or Arsenal were going to blow Luton away, 3-4, 5-0. That was the opinion that I had before the game. There was not going to be any kind of middle ground, and boy, was I wrong about that. And I can already see plenty of your comments coming through in the chat. Just before I kind of continue on with my sort of reaction to the game, we are going to go through some of your comments now. First one coming in here from John. Wow, Arsenal just love giving every one of us heart problems and anxiety, and you are not wrong. I certainly felt it towards the end. Anxiety through the roof. Absolutely. We also have a comment coming here from Victor saying Raya continues to make fans wonder if Arteta must be making a mistake. And to be honest with you, this is a really valid comment coming in from Victor here. The debate of, who gets the nod between the sticks over the last sort of few weeks had quietened down. That debate had rumbled on for quite some time after Raya had displaced Ramsdale. But after tonight, and we will talk about the 2 errors during the game, it makes you wonder whether or not that debate is now going to be reignited as the weeks go along. I've already seen on social media, in the few minutes that I have had to look at things, people already saying that Ramsdale should be starting the next game for Arsenal. And I'm sure that Mikel Arteta will be asked questions on this as well. John saying that he never wants us to go away to Luton again. Yeah, what a place to go and play football. Such a tight place. Fans practically on the pitch. I mentioned this at halftime on social media. It's such a difficult, in-your-face place to go and play football. Judge, credit to Luton for the fight, my lord. Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned this already. It was really unlucky for them. You have to kind of feel sorry for them a little bit. Not too much as Arsenal fans. We can't feel sorry for them too much, but they did put one hell of a shift in. Judge saying here that he did say that it was going to be scrappy. We've also got Corey coming here saying that have to be encouraged by Kai Havertz' continued growth in this team. Yeah, absolutely spot on, Corey. Can't agree with you more. Over the last few weeks, he's picked up goals and assists. He's finally settled into this Arsenal team. Yes, he's played in the Premier League before, A lot of people kind of expected him to sort of come in as a Premier League proven player, if you can call it that, and have that impact straight away for big money, 60 million plus. But what we have to take into consideration is that regardless of whether you've got that Premier League experience and you're coming in for big money, not everyone is going to come in and adjust and make an impact straight away. Similarly to like Declan Rice, he was someone who came in and he made an impact straight away. It's not going to happen all the time. You've got to have that time to adjust. And now we're starting to see the fruits of his labour in this part of the season. Hopefully this will continue. People also saying, agreeing with these comments coming in the chat with regards to Havertz. So do continue to get your comments in with regards to the game, how you felt the game was, the good, the bad, the ugly, talking points that we can go through throughout this live show. I will bring as many of those questions up on screen as physically possible without keeping you too long, because here in the UK, it's already 10:30. I know we do have a lot of viewers from abroad as well, where the time zones are different. So without no further ado, I've given a kind of brief reaction on the game. I thought that it was going to be, as I said, one of these games where Arsenal were either going to struggle and win maybe 1-0 and nick a 1-0 victory, or absolutely blow Luton away. And I've already mentioned how wrong I was. I'm sure a lot of other fans out there felt the same. I don't think anyone was expecting an easy game away from home at Luton. The reverse fixture, I'm sure, will be very, very different. But yeah, I'd say that I was going to say no real surprises. It absolutely shocked me with how things unfolded today, if I'm honest with you. So we are going to run through my thoughts on some of the key moments in the game. And to be honest with you, there are plenty of key moments to talk about in this game. We've just seen a comment come through in the chat as well from Rancid Pumpkin. And you know what, mate? You are absolutely right. I'm so glad. I'm happy to do this show. It gives me an opportunity, gives you guys an opportunity to kind of talk things through before trying to maybe get a wink of sleep or calm down over the next few hours before settling down for the evening, maybe. But it was certainly a roller coaster ride, to say the very least. Daniel Knight also coming in the chat. So welcome, everyone. Great time to get involved in the show. As I said, we're just about to go through the key moments. We're going to start with the first half, of course. We're going to talk about the first goal and the first kind of like 20 minutes of the game as well, because it was a really slow start to the game, in my opinion. And it was a game that I think Arsenal were definitely expecting a very physical battle. It was a very physical game. It was a game that I expected Arsenal to have a lot of the ball, and we did. If we have a look here very quickly at some of the stats, not this screen, let's get the right screen. That would be a good start. This one here. So yeah, if we have a look at the stats and the information from the game, you know, it was a game that most people, whether you're an Arsenal fan or not, a lot of people expected Arsenal to have the majority of the ball this evening, and there were no real surprises there, with Arsenal having 67% of possession of the ball. And it was very much the case in the early stages of this game as well. Arsenal dominated possession, and Luton tried to make it as difficult as possible for Arsenal. The one thing that I was surprised about the most wasn't the physicality of Luton. A lot of people expected that. That's why we saw players like Kivior, for example, get the nod. Arsenal wanted to look to match that physicality early doors. But what I was surprised by was the level of pressure and the high press that Luton were implementing in those early stages. And the reason why I was so surprised is Arsenal are a team. Yes, it's a small pitch. Yes, it's a tight pitch. But Arsenal are the sort of team that if you're caught high up the pitch, you will get punished. But Luton obviously playing to their advantages. Another thing that I noticed early doors in the first half as well is Arsenal weren't looking to press in that final third as much as they used to. So maybe something that Arteta saw there. But the first goal of the game, which I'm sure Luton, it felt like a game of many errors. Not all of the goals came from errors, of course, but a lot of the goals came from errors. In the first goal, Arsenal stayed calm in possession of the ball whilst they were being pressured, whilst they were being hurried. It came from a mistake, a pass back to the goalkeeper, and he felt the need to put it out into touch for a throw-in. And credit where credit's due to Gabriel Jesus, and a lot of strikers would have left that ball to maybe one of the fullbacks to throw in. But, he sees an opportunity. He seizes that opportunity. He throws the ball to Bukayo Saka, who sees an opportunity to make a run in behind to square it to Martinelli. And I thought it was really intelligent play from Arsenal, not only from Gabriel Jesus' point of view, jumping on that opportunity, but even after that ball is thrown in, there's still a lot of work for Bukayo Saka to do to get in and around those defenders and square it to Martinelli to make it 1-0. Now, after that, we can see here on the momentum, it only took, 4 or 5 minutes for Arsenal to be pegged back at 1-1. And, Arsenal are often praised for how good they are at set pieces, not only in scoring from set pieces, whether that be free kicks or corners, but also how well they defend set piece and corners. And surprisingly, prior to the game, I watched it on Amazon. I'm sure a lot of people did watch the game on Amazon as well. But to my surprise, Luton were ranked number 1 for most of the crossing and set piece stats and goals. So I'm sure Arteta done his homework on this. So I was quite surprised that, 2 of the goals that Luton had scored actually came from set pieces. I was quite shocked. I don't think it comes down to Arsenal not doing their homework, because midweek Jorginho done a interview with, I think it was The Athletic, and he goes into details around how Arteta literally leaves no stone unturned, how they prepare for quite literally every single scenario possible. So with Luton being one of, if not the highest in the Premier League for, opportunities created from set pieces and crosses, I would have imagined that Arsenal certainly would have prepared for that. So when we look at the first goal that Luton scored today to make it 1-1, you have to analyse the movement in the box, the marking, and it was highlighted at half-time that Arsenal do go with a kind of mixed system of man marking and zonal marking. And Martinelli looks to try and stop Osso from being able to build any momentum in that run, but he loses his player, and the way he kind of leaps for the ball, no goalkeeper's going to save it. The position that the ball ends up in, I just think that maybe Martinelli could potentially do better to put the Luton player under a little bit of pressure. So all of Arsenal's patience and hard work was undone. But what we saw towards the end of the first half, perfect time to score, really, when you think about it. We see a lovely give and go on the right-hand side between Bukayo Saka and Ben White, a 1-2. And the ball floated into the box is a good one, because Ben White is clearly identified. When you look back at the replay of the goal, the only player in the box at the time is Kai Havertz. Now, Jesus is obviously the one that heads the ball into the back of the goal, but at the time of Ben White looking to cross that ball into the box, the only player there is Kai Havertz, and obviously one of the only players in this Arsenal team that we can really say is a great header of the ball from an attacking point of view. And he floats that ball in. Instead of fizzing it in, he floats it in anticipation of other Arsenal players arriving late into the box. And Kai Havertz makes a really clever run towards that front post, dragging 2 of the central Luton defenders out with him. And with Gabriel Jesus arriving late into the box, you've only got the right fullback and one of the midfield players. And by that point, it's already too late for Jesus to then just nod the ball into what was effectively an open goal. So some really, really good play in that first half. I think, if you are really kind of analysing things and looking to kind of scrutinise things, there's probably more that the Luton goalkeeper could have done, potentially in the way he's cleared the ball. Maybe Luton players could have got back a little bit quicker for Arsenal's goal if we're kind of over hyper-critically analysing that first goal. And then with regards to the corner, yes, there are going to be games where players lose their man. It just happens, unfortunately. So if we're being really sort of hypercritical, there are areas for both sides, realistically speaking, where they could look to improve. So there is one more thing I want to talk about from the first half just before we move into talking about the second half. I'm going to go through some of your comments first, though. Daniel Knight coming in here saying that Arsenal got lucky tonight. I do have to agree. I think Arsenal did get rather lucky tonight, leaving it very, very late indeed. A bit of luck and a bit of unlucky and a whole lot of still nerves. Raya's 2 errors nearly cost us. Yeah, and it's one of those things, isn't it, where, in previous seasons, Arsenal have been scrutinised for dropping points too often for individual errors. And it did seem for a long time that we'd cut those out of our sort of game management, if you will, and they're slowly starting to creep back in as well. Do you see City dropping points tomorrow? It's a difficult one. When you look at some of the ways that they've played recently, it's certainly possible. This 4 centre-back system that they're using at the moment, and no John Stones, they're certainly shipping goals. They're not as watertight as they were when they played a slightly different system at the back, and obviously when John Stones is there. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see if Pep Guardiola does persist with that 4 centre-back system. And of course, no KDB as well from an attacking point of view is absolutely huge. I expected a close game, but not this close. It's pretty annoying how we gave the goals away. Absolutely, yeah, very frustrating in how we gave those goals away. Welcome to the show, Keith. Thank you very much for coming along. David Raya, yes, we will be talking about him in this show, no doubt. Thank goodness Arteta kept his most of our starters, or it would have been a different result. He showed proper respect for Luton and took this as seriously and a tough side. Yeah, it was quite interesting that you sort of say this, because in the build-up to the game, obviously a lot of Arsenal fans post on social media, their predicted 11s, and a lot of people were talking about, Arsenal needing to kind of rotate because games are coming sort of thick and fast during December. And I do agree, yeah, you obviously will need to rotate in December. It's a horrible month in the season. It's a month in the season where, historically, a lot of injuries are picked up, unfortunately, just due to the congestion of fixtures. So it will be really, really interesting to see what side he goes with on the weekend against Aston Villa, because arguably that's an even bigger game, an even tougher game before the dead rubber following in midweek against PSV, where I do fully expect Arteta to give a number of the lads a rest and for him to mix it up. We've got Neil joining the chat as well. Thank you very much for coming along. Big yourself up as well, my friend. So yeah, as I said, do get your questions in. We are going to move into the second half in just a moment. There was one thing I wanted to talk about, which kind of flipped. And I know a lot of you in the chat are going to have various opinions on VAR in the second half in comparison to the first half. So the VAR I wanted to talk about in the first half, there were two clearances from Luton players, one of which was a clearance made with the foot, which struck the arm. And then again, I think it was from a corner. One of the Luton defenders went to head the ball clear and it hit his hand or his forearm. And one thing I really do like, because there's been a lot of really controversial VAR decisions when it comes to handball of late, both in the Premier League and the Champions League. And yes, whilst those decisions, had they have gone ahead, would have been in Arsenal's favour, no doubt, awarding a penalty or two, I do think they were the right calls. And it was really, really nice to see from a VAR perspective, for a change, that they actually got those calls right. They were reviewed, they were looked at, and even during the game, listening to the commentary, in my opinion, if those were decisions on the other foot and Arsenal were conceding penalties for those types of clearances, you'd be really, really, really mad. So for once, I'm giving VAR and the officials some praise, but I'm sure that's probably all about to change when we talk about the second half. And the second half was full of goals, full of crazy, crazy decisions. And I'm sure you guys will want to get some opinions in the chat as well. So it didn't take long after the restart for us to see another goal in this game, and it came from another corner. And this is where arguably the first potential error came from David Raya. Arguably not the worst of the two, but I think the goal that we conceded was a mixture of David Raya not being commanding enough from the cross from the corner. And one of the major reasons why David Raya was brought into this Arsenal side and why he displaced Aaron Ramsdale was because of his ability to command the box when coming and collecting corners and crosses. And he got caught out, in my opinion. The other kind of 50% that we could look at and argue about is, could Declan Rice have done better? And there is an argument to suggest that he probably could have done better. He loses his man a little bit too easily. He gets out-muscled from a physical point of view. Obviously, I think it was, Adebayo, who's an absolute unit, definitely shrugs him off a little bit too easy. He's probably caught a little bit too maybe flat-footed, and he could have done a little bit better in looking to put the Adebayo off, really. Not necessarily the same type of marking in comparison to the first goal that we conceded from a corner with Martinelli. A little bit different. I think he's not as physical, not as big. So yeah, there's lots to be kind of picked at there, and it's definitely something Arsenal need to work on, because if you're a team coming to play against Arsenal in future weeks now, you can certainly see opportunities there. Whilst we've been one of the best teams in the Premier League at scoring from set pieces and also defending set pieces, there'll be a lot of big teams with big defenders potentially licking their lips, looking at the way that we've conceded those two goals. And I'm sure Arteta will have the boys on the training grounds going through their sessions and their routines in order to iron out those mistakes. Because for me, both of those goals from set pieces were definitely avoidable. And whether or not you want to call it a 50-50 blame between Declan Rice and David Raya for the second, or whether you want to place a little bit more blame on David Raya, having left the goal completely open, not catching that cross. Let me know in the chat, what do you think? That second goal that Arsenal concede, should David Raya be doing better? Is it kind of 50-50 blame? Who should we be looking at? Not necessarily finger pointing as such, but obviously we're looking at, where Arsenal can do better constructively. What should we be doing from these set pieces? Because it's not known for Arsenal to concede two set pieces in a game. Normally not even one. So two is a bit of a crazy one, in my opinion. But what happens next in the game for me is just, I just can't make heads or tails of it. So it starts in midfield. Ross Barkley manages to keep hold of the ball after a challenge from Martin Odegaard. He makes a driving run through the middle, passes to a colleague, sits out on that left side, receives the ball inside the 18-yard box, maybe moves forward slightly, and he has not the hardest shot. He hits it low. He's made sure he's got it on target so that he's working David Raya. And in my opinion, it's a routine goalkeeper save. Like I said, he doesn't hit it with absolute venom to the point where you can kind of understand why he lets it slip maybe slightly. But for me, David Raya has to be doing better for that goal. In my opinion, there are zero excuses, and this mistake opens up the whole argument now of whether or not Aaron Ramsdale should be starting the next game or getting an opportunity – sometime in the next few games, because yes, Aaron Ramsdale has had a mistake or two in his locker in the past, but I don't remember Aaron Ramsdale making this many mistakes at the start of his Arsenal career in such a short space of time. Please do in the chat correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm sort of missing something or I'm forgetting something at the start of Aaron Ramsdale's Arsenal career. But for me, you know, if Arteta wants competitions for places, if people need to be rewarded for, you know, hardworking training and that kind of thing, I do think that it's now the right time to maybe give Aaron Ramsdale an opportunity. Arteta is very loyal in the sense that when an Arsenal player does poorly, he likes to back them, not to bash their morale. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see David Raya in goal for the next couple of Arsenal games. But again, another one for you guys to answer in the chat, and we will go through your opinions because I do think this is going to be a huge talking point now over the next kind of couple of games. I do think this is going to be something we're going to see on social media over the next few weeks, and something that Mikel Arteta is going to get asked about this evening. I'm sure he's already been asked about it, and he's probably going to get asked about it in upcoming press conferences as well. So do get your comments in the chat around the whole, does David Raya start the next game for you? Should he be dropped? Should he be backed? What do you think? And once we finish analysing the second half, I'll go through some of your opinions on whether or not he should be backed or dropped for the next game or two. So at this point, the game is actually now 3-2 to Luton after some errors, after some moments that, in my opinion, could have been a lot better and managed a lot better as well. But unbelievably, it came from Arsenal's next goal to make it 3-3, and it's not the sort of football that you'd come to expect from Arsenal. But when you're playing against a physical beast, a dogfight of a side like Luton, maybe you have to switch the tactics up, and that's where our last two goals came from, to my surprise. So it was a long ball all the way up into the 18-yard box, which, to be honest with you, Gabriel Jesus takes down eloquently to basically play Kai Havertz in, which effectively means he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper. It would have been more difficult for Kai Havertz to have missed and not scored than it would have been for him to have missed the target altogether. So I'm really, really, really glad that we've seen Kai Havertz get on the score sheet yet again. Another really influential performance from Kai Havertz. You can certainly see why Kai Havertz got the nod ahead of Leandro Trossard in this fixture. A much bigger, much more physical player, a player who's going to win a lot of headers for you in the middle of the park against a really physical team, a player who's going to win a lot of headers for you from corners and set pieces and long balls. And he did that really, really well against Luton this evening. Rewarded with a goal. Really unlucky to not get a second goal towards the end of the second half, which was a moment where the goalkeeper tipped it over the crossbar. So really, really good stuff from Kai Havertz. I've seen some great comments from you guys in the chat box as well about Kai Havertz and how well he's played and how much better he's been playing recently. So it's really, really exciting to see what sort of player he turns into over the next few weeks. But as I said, the one thing that I'm most surprised about is the nature in which we scored that third goal to make it 3-3. It's not the sort of goal you would associate with an Arsenal side. You know, we play really fluid, free-flowing passing football, but it was nice to see Arsenal go with a different method to try and unlock the door because, as I said, Luton were a really physical side, really frustrating us throughout, and it was a long ball in the end that undone them, and a little bit of magic with a touch and pass from Jesus into Kai Havertz to make it 3-3, which basically at this point of the game, you were talking that there was like half an hour left, 6 goals in the game, loads of big tackles flying in, really, really physical game, crowd practically on the pitch, screaming in the players' faces, screaming at every decision that the referee made. So it was made for an absolute blockbuster finish in that last half an hour. And Arsenal were eventually rewarded for all their hard work and, well, just basically staying in the game, because there were points in that second half where you did think that, Luton could have nicked the game, and they did have opportunities after Arsenal's third goal when we made it 3-3. And when you look at the mistakes that David Raya made, and the fact that Arsenal conceded 3 goals, that element of concern can creep in to certain players' minds, especially David Raya, who had arguably made, a couple of mistakes. There is that sort of element of concern that starts to kind of sneak in, and all of a sudden, you're starting to question yourself on that next tackle or that next save. And Luton certainly had a couple of chances in that last 30 minutes. And I wouldn't have been surprised if it did go the other way. Obviously, I'm really glad it didn't. But Arsenal saving it to the very last minute to save the day, go 5 points top at the Premier League, even if it is just for one night. And again, another surprise for me is Arsenal haven't necessarily had a proper target man up top since, I think it was Olivier Giroud. And back then, when we were trailing in games, maybe by a goal, or maybe when it was a draw or drawing with 10 minutes to go, Arsenal would often float balls into the box, get crosses into the box, because we had that physical presence there. And in the last sort of like 15 to 20 minutes, Luton were probably very tired at this point. So you can see the game plan there with Kai Havertz on the pitch, a lot of big bodies in the box. There were a lot of crosses Arsenal put into the box. I'd love to see actually how many crosses Arsenal put into the box, and it's not me just chatting absolute rubbish. Let's have a look at the crosses in this game in the end. So shots, passes. Arsenal had 6 crosses. It did feel like there were a lot more than just the 6 crosses throughout the game, especially in that last sort of 10 to 15 minutes. And it was a cross in the end that managed to unlock the door of this Luton side. And it came from our boy Rice baby, of course, who runs off and celebrates. At this point, you have to feel a little bit sorry for the Luton players who had left absolutely everything on the pitch for their sides. And Arsenal walk away with all 3 points. And it's something that we're all too familiar with when it comes to Arsenal, not necessarily leaving it late, but Arsenal not giving up. This breed and group of players is very, very different to what we've seen in comparison to the kind of last 5 or 6 years under Arsene Wenger and the Emery stage. These guys they're mentality beasts. They do not give up. They play to the last whistle. And we saw that last season, the amount of games that Arsenal won in that last sort of 5 to 10 minutes of play. And this season is no different. And we managed to walk away with all 3 points because, again, we're throwing absolutely everything up until the very last whistle in the game. And it was beautiful to see. And I am so, so happy that it was Declan Rice who managed to get the goal for us. Now, there is one more thing I do want to talk about before we move into player ratings. But before we do that, I am going to go through some of your comments. I did promise that we would look at whether or not you think David Raya should be backed or dropped for the next Arsenal game or two. And we've got Rancid Pumpkin coming in here and saying that I would back Raya. It's not like Ramsdale is perfect. Absolutely right. Ramsdale is certainly not perfect. We have seen mistakes from him in the past as well. So what's the next comment here? Rice is amazing. I'm sure a lot of people will be very, very happy with Rice this evening. Arteta got booked for his celebration of our late winner. He won't be on the sideline against Villa. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't see that he had got booked for his celebration, actually. And I didn't realise that he was a yellow card away from a touchline ban. So it'd be really interesting to see how that affects the way Arsenal prepare and set up for what is arguably going to be a really, really big game, especially against a former Arsenal manager as well. Judge coming in here saying the Premier League can't handle Arteta, so they look for ways to derail him. Arsenal, lucky Gooners again. Yes, it could. It was a little bit lucky. You can't argue with that at all. Tomiyasu injured again. Is there some breaking news on Tomiyasu? If so, let me know what that is. Okie dokie. So the only other thing that I wanted to talk about before we get into player ratings this evening, and please do let me know once we start running through player ratings, what your ratings of each player is. But there were 2 VAR calls for Arsenal in the second half. I'm sure there may have been others that were not as potentially as significant, and I think maybe there might have been slightly more focus on these had the result have gone slightly differently. And it was in a very sort of short passage of play that both of these incidents, if you want to call them, happened. So the first one was from a corner. There was a Luton player holding on to Gabriel. Commentators said that it was sort of half and half of maybe Gabriel being pulled in one direction, but also Gabriel already kind of falling in that direction. It was reviewed by VAR and it was obviously a no. And then the other one was Bukayo Saka having a coming together with a Luton defender inside the box. He made a direct run towards goal. He made a pass inside to Trossard, and it was just after that pass that the coming together happened. It would have been, in my opinion, a soft decision. And as I said just a moment ago, I think that had the result have been a draw, or had Luton possibly have nicked it potentially, then maybe these decisions and these VAR reviews would have been looked at very, very differently. Please do let me know in the chat, what do you think? Regardless of the result, let's look at it from a completely different point of view. Were these the right decisions in your opinion? Or should they have been penalties? Which ones would you have given either which way? So we've got a comment coming in here from Keith saying we must be pissing so many people off with these last minute jobs. I absolutely love it. Rancid Pumpkin following up with a comment from earlier with regards to Tomiyasu. Kea Kainak reported it. So that's a huge blow because he was coming into some really, really good form. So I'm hoping that it's not for too long. And yes, we did survive. Thankfully, we did survive. And as John said earlier on in the chat, let's hope that we don't have to go back to Luton again any time soon. So we are going to move on to the player section of this show, and we are going to start with David Raya. This is the part of the show where I like to get you guys involved as much as possible. We look at the sofa scores out of 10 for each of the players. We then have a quick sort of mini 30-second discussion on each player, and then we give our own scores out of 10. So please do get your scores out of 10 for each player. I will read the names out beforehand, of course. And we are going to start with David Raya. Now, interestingly, I haven't checked yet. One thing I am going to be looking at here is whether or not he's blamed for 2 goals, errors leading to. So let's have a look here. Yes, so he is being put down as errors led to goals as 2. So that second goal that Arsenal conceded is the one I imagine is the other. Excuse me. He's made 1 save in the game, 2 high claims, 72% passing accuracy. But yeah, being blamed for 2 of the goals today. He was given a 5 rating out of 10 on SofaScore, and I do probably agree with that. If I'm really finding it difficult to go any higher than a 5. I'm half expecting 1 or 2 of you to be putting 3s and 4s in the chat for David Raya. But look, we all have an off day in the office, and fortunately for him, It hasn't come back to bite us, and we've managed to walk away with all 3 points. And literally, as I said, I'm expecting 3s and 4s in the chat. They start to come in from you guys. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all. But I think, yeah, a 5 was probably about as high as you could probably go for David Raya. Another interesting player, not so much from a selection point of view. I completely understand why he was given the nod today over Zinchenko. Zinchenko not necessarily known for his physicality and his defending, to put it politely. So no real surprises that Kivior got the nod. And I think that if Tomiyasu would have been fit, it probably would have been Tomiyasu and Ben White at fullback today, if I'm honest with you, given who our opponents were. A bit of an underwhelming performance, in my opinion. There were a few occasions where his decisions were slightly questionable. His passing as well, his positioning. Yeah, I think, ideally he doesn't want to be playing as a left back. And yeah, I think somewhere between maybe a 5 and a 6 would probably be fair. He's 80% passing accuracy, which is fine. He's made 2 tackles and 3 clearances. He's not setting the world alight, essentially. And I'm just seeing now the comments coming in from you guys saying 5. Yeah, I said 5 or 6. So yeah, I'm not really surprised that you guys are coming in with those ratings. I've just also seen here as well that we're hoping that Martinelli is not injured. Me too. He got an absolute battering in that game, if I'm honest with you. And every time he went down, the fans were, booing him afterwards every time he got on the ball. It seems as though the same thing happens every week, doesn't it, to both Martinelli and Saka. They get an absolute pasting every single week. And in a kind of weird way, I suppose it's a bit of a compliment, isn't it? Because there isn't any other way that these defenders and players feel like they can stop the likes of Martinelli and Saka other than to kick 2 lumps out of them and hope that maybe they can't continue. A bit Hector Bellerin with the throw-ins. Yeah, there were a few dodgy decisions, throw-ins, and I'm a bit surprised actually that the referee never blew up on a couple of occasions. Okay, so on the other side, we have Ben White. He was given a 7.2 rating out of 10, credited with an assist and a really vital part in the game as well, helping Arsenal go ahead just before the break, putting Arsenal in the, the driving seat for, in-game minutes for about 5 or 6 minutes. I thought, generally speaking, he had a pretty decent game. He's been playing sort of the odd minute here and there due to sort of managing workload and injuries. 4 clearances, an interception, a tackle, only dribbled past twice, 4 duels, 1 out of 9, 85 passing completion. So all round fairly solid performance from Ben White. He's been given a 7.2. I'm going to give him a flat 7. I don't think any more or less is overstretching it either. I can certainly see some people maybe going with sort of like a 7.5 to a 6.5. Keith coming in with a 7, Chipper Boy a 6.5. Cannot argue with either of those at all. Gabriel, he is credited with a 6.5. Ones across the board for all the defensive key performance indicators, and also winning 5 duels out of 7. 88 passing completion, only 4 long balls out of 11. There was a lot of long balls today. We normally look at our centre-backs. They have a lot of the ball throughout the game. They often have nearly the most touches, the highest passing accuracy, and not many long balls. But it just goes to show the type of game that Luton were playing today. It'd be interesting to see what Saliba's stats are in just a moment. But yeah, 6.5 to a 7 is probably a fair score to give, which is going to be agreed with in the chat. And hopefully I am backed in what I just said with regards to Saliba and his long balls. 4 clearances and a tackle, 6 duels, 1 out of 9, 89 passing completion. So really high stats in those areas as we've come used to seeing. And then long ball's only 3, interestingly. I was expecting that to be a little bit higher based on what I just said, but he was also given a 6.5, both the centre-backs there. It's really difficult to say any higher, maybe a 7 at a push when you're conceding 3 goals, but arguably, 2 of those goals are not even, William Saliba or Gabriel's fault. Maybe is there something that one of them could do for the Barkley goal? Could they have closed the angle down better? You're really kind of clutching at straws there, maybe. A 6 and a 7 for Saliba coming in from the chat. Okay, moving into midfield, we've got Kai Havertz, who was really active today, as the chat has suggested earlier. And when I also agree to say that Kai Havertz is becoming very, very important. He's understanding his role a lot more. He was credited with a goal today for all of his hard work. I felt like he won a lot of headers. Aerial duels, 11 aerial duels, winning 6 of them to no surprise. He played really, really well, in my opinion, today. Really physical presence in the middle of the park and up top. 4 ground duels out of 8 as well. And you can just see how involved he was in that physical battle in midfield. 1 clearance, 1 interception, 2 tackles. For me, 7.5 to 8 is probably where it needs to be. And it's exactly what I'm seeing in the chat as well, which is quite nice. And we'll talk about Declan Rice last from midfield. I'm sure they'll be held in high regard after his winner this evening. But we will talk about Martin Odegaard, Captain Odegaard, with another assist. He had a really good start to the season, went for a quiet patch, and now he's in the goals and assists again. The goal contributions is what you want to see from your captain when they play in that attacking role. 90% passing accuracy, 81 touches, very much involved in the game as well. Very much involved in the ground duels. I know he's not necessarily known for his tackling, but he does set the tone for Arsenal in that high press. Hence why he is involved in as many ground duels as he's involved in. Generally speaking, an all-round solid performance. In that last kind of 10, 15, 20 minutes of the game, when Arsenal had Luton boxed in, he saw a lot of the ball. He cleared the ball up really nicely, recycled the ball really, really nicely from a lot of the crosses that Arsenal put into the box as well. So generally speaking, I'd say another player with around about a sort of 7.5 to 8 rating, and a chat agreeing with 7.5. But 7.5 to an 8. Can't wait to see what everyone's thoughts are on Declan Rice and his rating. What a machine of a man he is. How vital was he? Yes, I know he scored the winner, which is probably going to elevate his score to an even higher rating than he'd normally get. But taking that element away from it just a second, he's just an absolute unit. And what I really like about Declan Rice as well is we have a look at his defensive stats here just quickly. He was involved in 8 duels, winning 50% of them. 2 clearances, 2 tackles, 1 interception, which on paper, when you look at it, probably does. You don't look at that and go, wow, absolutely outstanding. It's what you expect from your defensive midfielder. It's what you expect from your single pivot. But what, for me, elevates Declan Rice even higher, not just the fear that he puts in players and they feel like they have to try and avoid him in the middle of the park, but it's the way he reads the game. It's the way he moves, the way he positions himself that has an effect on the game, generally speaking. And that the way he shields the back four, we haven't had a player like that who consistently does it every single week. And I bet Gabriel and Saliba are buying this man dinner on a weekly basis because it's what he does off the ball, which is so underrated, as well as what he does on the ball and what he does in making the challenges. And today, the cherry on the top, obviously, was him scoring the winning goal in the dying moments of the game. So for me, personally, he gets an 8 rating. I can see people coming in here to the chat saying 8 as well, or 8.5 very easily. I could even see some people saying a 9 because of what he does. And yeah, people agreeing with me in the chat saying watch Rice's positioning. Everyone should watch Declan Rice off the ball. Honestly, for anyone wanting to know how to play that role, if you're a young football player looking to understand how to play the game in midfield, go and watch Declan Rice when he hasn't got the ball. Honestly, unbelievable. And as a lot of people know, a lot of these players, Declan Rice today, if you look at it, he's had 90 touches in the game. He spends more time without the ball at his feet than he does with the ball at his feet. So go and have a look at what he does when he doesn't have the ball at his feet, because it is absolutely vital to what Arsenal do when they transition into attack. Okie dokie, Gabriel Martinelli, who we're hoping isn't injured after the several assaults that he had today, getting himself a goal. One thing I was quite surprised at, obviously, outside of domestic cups and European competitions, this was only his second Premier League goal this season. And a lot of people are looking at Martinelli and saying that he's in some crazy form at the moment. And I think one of the reasons why he's being credited with this great form at the minute is because of all of the work that, again, he's doing off the ball, the way he's sort of dragging two players out in every single game on that left-hand side, creating space for his colleagues. A lot of the tracking back that he does, he will quite literally sprint all the way to one end of the pitch with the ball, lose it, and then sprint to the other end of the pitch. His work rate is unrivaled. And for him to have got as many knocks as he did today and to continue to get up over and over and over and over again and keep going and keep going and keep going, credit where credit's due to his work rate. Unbelievable. He was given a 7.2 rating. He got himself a goal, as I mentioned, 72 passing accuracy, only 34 touches, and it felt like he was really involved in the game down the left-hand side, winning 3 out of 9 duels. Generally speaking, from a statistical point of view, nothing that really kind of stands out here on paper. A solid 7 out of 10, which is what's being agreed in the chat. And then we've got Bukayo Saka over on the right-hand side, who saw his fair share of assaults as well. He got himself an assist today, making his 200th appearance. First player to do that at his age since Cesc Fabregas, and he didn't turn out too badly, in my opinion. And I do believe he now has, I think it's 98 goal contributions. I have to credit the stat to Keith in the chat, who brought it up in our WhatsApp chat, which is basically a goal contribution every other game at just the age of 22 years old, not even in his peak yet. So it's scary to think what that number might look like sometime in the future. 83% passing accuracy, 0 crosses out of 8 completed, same with long balls out of 3, and then 15 ground duels. Again, when we look back at the last podcast that we've done on this channel, his ground duels seem to be really, really high every single week, and that's just due to the fact that a lot of the ball does go through Bukayo Saka, hence the volume of ground duels that he's in. But yeah, 7.5 to an 8 rating for him, and we've got an 8 and a 7 coming from the chat. Yeah, Keith coming in here with the stats. 52 assists and 41 goals. Outstanding stuff indeed. You cannot knock that at all. And then finally, we've got Gabriel Jesus, who, interestingly, when you're looking at this Arsenal team on SofaScore, was effectively credited man of the match for this game. For some reason, his stats won't come up now. All right, let's try that again, shall we? No, they won't come up. But yes, Gabriel Jesus, he got an 8.8 rating out of 10. He was very, very good today. Obviously got himself a goal. An absolute nuisance up top. So I think an 8 rating is probably fair for Gabriel Jesus. Chippy giving him an 8. Keith giving him a 9. Yeah, to be fair, his IQ today, when you look at the throw in to Bukayo Saka, the assist for Kai Havertz, and also the goal that he got as well, it's hard to argue a 9, and be interesting to see if he does get credited with the man of the match tonight as well. Okay, so that's going to about wrap things up for this episode of Arsenal Analysed Live. I do hope that everyone has enjoyed. Arsenal currently sit top of the Premier League, which I'm very happy about, by 5 points until City and Liverpool play tomorrow. We'll see how that unfolds. But if you have enjoyed this episode of Arsenal Analysed Live, instant reaction, analysis, and player ratings, do go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here as well, so that you don't miss out on any future podcasts, videos, or shows. And also get that notification bell button on as well, so that you know when I go live or when a video is posted. So thank you all very much for showing your support in the chat and supporting the channel. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. Really, really do appreciate it. I hope you all do enjoy your mornings, afternoons, or evenings from wherever it is that you're watching. And until the weekend, stay safe, take care, and come on, you guys.